Are we working? Aha. Good morning, everyone. Can I encourage you to take your seats, please? Good morning. I know we're all enjoying meeting people we haven't seen for a long time, and that's part of the wonderful family of the IAA that we are, and it's great that we are here together. So good morning and welcome to our first major gathering. Of course, we had our welcome reception last night, so that was our first chance to say hello. But this is the beginning of the formal proceedings for this week. And it's my great pleasure to welcome you here to Seoul. My first time in this beautiful city, and I suspect for a large number of you, it's also your first time. And I hope you've had a chance to go and look around and see the sights of what is not only a historic city, but also a modern and really thriving, young, growing city. And it's great to be here for our meetings. I've given the title to this section, Looking to the Future. We've spent quite a lot of time in recent past focusing on internal governance matters. Really important internal governance matters, really important that we do it right. I mentioned last night about the IAA having a culture of consensus. Sometimes that means it takes us a little longer to do things because it's important for us that we do things together, that we reach agreement, that we're happy with where we're going. But when we get together and when we reach agreement, then I hope we're able to execute quickly. Anyway, I'm in the luxury of, at the moment, not having too many internal governance matters to focus on, so I can have the luxury of encouraging us to look to the future. So this is the agenda. Where do I point this? It's thank you. To look to the future, and this is the agenda for this morning. I'm going to focus on a number of items that will be key parts of the discussions that we'll be having this week. Not surprisingly, given that I promised when I took over last year that I would focus on artificial intelligence, you will hear a lot about that. But within that also is some really important stuff around education, which is going to be an important subject for us, and how that evolves, particularly in light of AI, and the work of the Future Actuary Task Force. I've sort of squeezed that into the AI section, but it's an important part of looking to the future. And then I want to spend a little bit of time on what for me is a really important part of the IAA, and that is looking at the growth of our global profession. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about the growth of associations, and a little bit of time talking about how the IAA can support individual actuaries as well. And we've got a number of speakers who will join me up on stage for different bits. And then finally, I just want to spend a little bit of time getting us to look to the future in another important area that is very relevant for all of us actuaries. And that's what's happening to populations and some of the issues that it raises for us to think about. So that's our agenda for today. I was pressing the wrong button before, that's why. This is a welcome from myself, the officers, and the Executive Director, Mathieu, who all need no introduction, but we're all here, we're all really pleased to be with you today, and I hope you will all, at some stage, find time to speak to one or all of us and be welcomed properly to Seoul. So, without much further ado, I'm going to kick off by moving into the first session on artificial intelligence. I'm going to start by inviting Frank in a minute to come up and talk about what the future might hold for us as an introduction to this topic. This is a key issue for us. It affects all walks of life, and it's a really important area for us as actuaries to be on the front foot, to be clear what it is we're trying to achieve, to think through all the different areas that it affects us. And in a minute, after Frank has spoken, I'm going to ask Peter to come up and give you an update about the work of the task force. I will just say in advance that one of the great things that I've noticed from the work of the task force is that we've reached out as the IAA we received 100 volunteers, over 100 volunteers to help us in this work, many of whom had never come across the IAA before and were really excited to suddenly discover the global profession. So one of the things that I'm really pleased about is the fact that we've using this subject to reach out to the next generation of actuaries. Anyway, that's enough from me as an introduction. Frank, can I invite you to join the stage and kick us off in this discussion?
Thank you, Charles. Oh, okay.
That's what I do.
An AI would... So I'd like to talk a bit about actuaries in an AI world. So there are 4 futures, which was written by a colleague of mine, Jim Weiss, in the Actuarial Review. So if you Google 4 futures for actuaries in the wake of AI, you can find this article and read it. I've just reorganized it a bit and added some color to the scenarios. So if you look at the axes, you can imagine a world where there's little or heavy impact to actuarial roles, meaning our employment. So on the left, you can see that actuaries still have many of the jobs we retain, and on the right, actuarial roles start getting replaced. And on the y-axis, you can see there are adjustments, right? Actuaries perform job roles similar to what we do today, or if we have to adjust in the wake of AI. I should say these images were generated by AI. I thought it would be apropos for this conversation to have these scenarios. And the names of these scenarios are interesting. So the far bottom left is called Groundhog Day in the article. And this is saying that there's a hype to this, and then eventually the hype will die down and actuaries pretty much will be unaffected. I'm not going to deep dive on that one. On the upper right, you have a lot of impact to our roles, so we need fewer actuaries in the future, and we have to adjust the way we do things. So you've got an actuary sitting there managing a bunch of AI doing different tasks. The 2 scenarios, that's called training. No, it's not called Training Day. He called it something really funky. I don't remember. Bottom right is Doomsday, where we've all been replaced by AI. I will deep dive on that scenario. And then the upper left is called Training Day, and that is us learning how to train AI to do the tasks that we need to do. So I'll go over those 2 scenarios. If you're interested in the others, I do have slides, but I've been trying to limit this to 10 minutes. Okay, for the Doomsday scenario, let me make some arguments for why this is possible, and then tell you what it looks like. So a lot of actuaries have routine automatable work, right? You start with maybe what we call ETL, extract, transform, load of data, right? We're just munging data pipelines. There's some basic analysis that we might need to do, and this can climb the ladder up toward regular rate or reserve reviews, or even predictive model refreshes. And these things are highly automatable. It's a set of instructions that we could give AI and say, perform these tasks, and they could learn how to do them. So there's a lot of our work which feels like it would go away. But then there's more concerning things. So AI is actually better than us at finding data. Jessica Leong, who was a former president of the CAS, had given a webinar on how to use AI to find data for fires and convective storms. And so there's a whole lot of stuff out there that AI can do for us in generating data. I'm not sure. Actually, a show of hands, how many people have tried to use AI to find more data than you have? Oh, wow, that's quite a bit. All right, great, awesome. And you'd be surprised, sometimes it does it. Now, I know a lot of folks will say, but AI hallucinates, right? How can I show this to a regulator or even to my manager with comfort? But they actually have ways of regulating this. So if you look up Galileo.ai, that's one of the biggest companies in the they have a hallucination firewall blog post where they talk about how they prevent hallucination for folks using AI. So you have companies like Galileo, you have other folks out there that are really thinking about this problem. It could potentially go away, and then we can get fresh data. You can also work with AI to ask, where did you find this? How do you find the source? And if you're good at debugging generative AI, you can find where the data comes from. Another argument is that we are more creative. Humans are inventive, we're original. But if we created it, it's out there. And we'll go back maybe 20 years. So when I was writing my thesis, I graduated late because several chapters of my PhD was published in a book by a Romanian mathematician, Toma Albu, that my advisor had just come upon. And remember, 2002, the internet was there, but not everything was online. These days, everything's online, and you can pick up a copy of Dr. Albu's book for $300. And I guarantee you ChatGPT can read it faster than I can and digest the whole of it. So if we create it, it's out there. There's a lot of original work that we've done, but these patterns are available for generative AI to learn from. So as much as we are original, there's already enough material out there, source material, for generative AI to work with. And then finally, I have another slide on AutoGPT, but AutoGPT is really scary. It is self-correcting, self-learning, and it can decompose tasks. What I mean by that is, if you wanted to plan a birthday party for your 5-year-old son, or maybe older, but your 5-year-old son, you'd say, ChatGPT, help me plan a party for my 5-year-old son. And then you have to iterate. And you say, okay, well, all right, here's what I think about the venue. It says, what about guest list? Here's how I think about the guest list, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this was a conversation I had at breakfast as well. ChatGPT does a great job doing an initial stab, and then you have to refine it. AutoGPT will go and say, oh, you want to do a birthday party. In order to do a birthday party, we need to know a venue, a guest. It may even go online and buy gifts for you, right? This is how powerful AutoGPT is, because it decomposes the task for you and then does all the tasks automatically. All right, what does this look like? So AI does the mundane tasks for us. We solve hallucination. Then we train AI on more complex actuarial work. It learns from the large body of existing work, and then fewer actuaries are needed, and you can see the robot future on the upper right. Just wanted to put this up here on AutoGPT before we move on. AutoGPT can write its own code. It can discover that you don't have certain libraries and install those. So it is quite amazing. I just put these 2 tweets up there. They're public on the on AutoGPT's blog, so worth looking into. All right, training day. So training day is like the doomsday scenario, but it's doomsday light, right? Many jobs are going to be doable via AI, but some are not. And the evidence for this, there are professionals out there who focus on AI. If you go to Google or use ChatGPT, you will find that there are prompt engineer positions out there. There are AI scientists out there, folks that design retrieval augmented graphs and all the other kind of stuff that you need to manage an AI workforce. So these professionals are being hired. It's a new realm. And then why won't they take over, right? We could say, all right, so you see that there's all these jobs. Why don't we have this doomsday scenario? The New York Times recently released an article that said that a lot of these AI startups are really underwater. Anthropic AI, which is one of the biggest contenders to OpenAI and Microsoft and Google, has a $1+ billion deficit between revenues and expenses. That's a lot to overcome, right? AI may give us a lot of benefits, but I don't think there's enough customers to pay enough gaps for all these startups, so many of these will fail. So we're kind of at the early fervor phase, and it may come back down, so there's evidence for that. And then humans are completely unpredictable. I'm gonna focus this on America real quick. We really like to sue in America, right? And so there's all these lawsuits out there, and these lawsuits are made by interpretations of the law. And I don't think that AI is going to be able to figure out how a jury is going to react, right? These plaintiffs are getting very good at tugging at the heartstrings of the jury. You know, can you imagine this danger that's out there? And the jury's like, great, massive award. But even beyond America, we write regulation right now, right? I mean, I was in a several-hour session on the ISAPs, and there was a lot of debate. And I don't know that AI could have done better. I actually went to ChatGPT and said, all right, write a standard about enterprise risk models. What do you think? You know, here's your considerations. It didn't do as well as the members of that committee. So I don't think AI can understand sort of the human emotion, negotiation aspect of how we make laws or regulations or standards. It's possible you could try to teach it that, but then it would say, this is so irrational, I can't figure out how to predict it. Okay, so what does this look like? Actuaries begin adopting AI to help with the tasks as usual. As AI develops, actuaries pick up new skills, things like prompt engineering and how to manage AI safely. We'll continue to balance stakeholder needs, including regulators. There's a lot of regulation out there, like the AI Act, right? And actuaries are experts in dealing with regulation. So we can actually help navigate this landscape a lot better. And so to perform this job task, we'll have to learn enough about AI and then build on the foundation that we already have in order to manage AI and incorporate it into our future. And that's the last slide. Hopefully I didn't go over. Okay.
That's great. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Frank. That was just the introduction I was hoping for, that it really wakes us up to what is coming down the line and why it's really important for us as a profession to address AI in all of the different aspects of how it's going to affect us. So we agreed at the end of last year that we would set up a task force, that we would give it some specific objectives to produce work within 5 different areas, looking at professionalism and ethics, looking at education, looking at governance, looking at how it's affecting the lives of actuaries today and what tasks it can do to make our lives easier, so some of the things that Frank was talking about, but also innovation. What can it do for us that we're not doing at the moment? How can we change our mindsets to engage with AI in a very different way? So, without any more ado, I'm going to invite Peter to come up to the stage to start talking about the excellent work that he's been leading with the work of this task force. Peter. That's the next one.
That's the next one, okay. So the task force was created with, at the end of last year, as Charles has said, with the objectives, and the terms of reference was sent out to the FMAs in January. to get respondents, and we got close to 100 respondents. We have got 97 volunteers from 27 associations involved in this exercise. I stand to be corrected, but I think it is, if not the biggest task force structure that the IA have implemented, if it's not the biggest, it's certainly one of. And in most cases, associations put forward a number of volunteers, and we essentially tried to take one volunteer from each association. But where there were the bigger associations who were strongly supportive, we added in the opportunity to have two association representatives in each work stream. So we have 5 work streams, as Charles has spoken about, and a central steering committee. And the objective really is to keep the momentum going. This is a photograph taken of the people at the Singapore summit, and I think one of the key factors that Charles has mentioned was there were a lot of people there that this was their first interaction with the IAA. If you look in that photograph, if we were, with all due respect to myself and others who are like me, if we were to take a similar photograph, the age demographics would be somewhat different. And I think this is one of the most exciting things about this AI work stream, is that it has got a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, and it is young. And I think that, to me, is one of the exciting things about this task force. The key challenges are from the Singapore summit, which we had about 50 people, about half of the task force present, is how do we keep that enthusiasm, how do we keep that energy going? But because you've got 5 work streams, each one of them is doing what it thinks is right and what it thinks is necessary. And the role of the central coordination team is to try and limit overlap and maintain focus, because this is, A, it's a very, very fast changing space, and B, it is an enormous picture if you try and as they say, that if you want to eat an elephant, one bite at a time is the way to do it. We need to do that one bite at a time here. So we're trying to consolidate thought, we're trying to limit overlap, and we're certainly not trying to duplicate FMA activities. What we're trying to do is to produce something that coordinates and consolidates FMA activities. And I think one of the exciting things to me was the extent of support that we've got from the FMAs to step into this space. We're certainly not seeking to create a new committee of the IAA that deals with artificial intelligence. We have a deadline. We have a target to complete our work by the end of this year. And you'll see just now when we look at the work plans or the deliverables targeted by each of the work streams, the dates are all in 2024. Now, that might be a little bit naive. I do expect that there might be some recommendation of what we need to do beyond there. But one of the key things that we want to do is we want to be practical, and secondly, we want to avoid document graveyards. I think it was a great word that somebody came up with in the session, is we don't want to have a document graveyard. That this task force produces documents, left, right, and center, none of which are of any use. They get produced, they get stamped, they get put in the filing cabinet, and never looked at again. We can't afford that with this exercise. So just talking very briefly, and I do believe that the slides will be available to the delegates here at some stage. So there's a lot of text on these slides, so I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail on each. But the key element from the professionalism ethics work stream, what we believe, and I'm involved in that work stream as well, what we believe our key outcome is probably going to be as the second bullet point down there, which is developing a document of professionalism considerations for any actuaries working with AI. Because fundamentally, we believe that as a profession, our unique advantage that we have in this space is the professionalism aspect, the ethics aspect that comes into play. So using AI ethically and playing into that because of the fact, and sometimes people would consider that our professionalism overlay is actually an impediment. I actually believe it's a competitive advantage because users want to see actuaries want to see people using AI ethically. Otherwise, you wouldn't have things like the AI Act in the UK, in the Europe, sorry. So I think that's going to be one of the key things. The third one, probably of interest in this room as well, is that that document I spoke of there was really for the individual actuary. The third bullet down there under terms of the main inputs is producing a document to just assist FMAs to go back and review their own codes of conduct to say, does our code of conduct actually have sufficient in it to cover this point, to cover this topic? And so we're looking to put together a document that can effectively be a document for FMAs to consider how that plays into the mix. And then lastly, the developing a messaging to supranational organizations and other potential alliances on how actuaries and IA can help them meet their own mandates. Talking then to the changing role of actuaries, and this is very much how does the actuary's role change within the current context that we work in. And so it's looking at how to use AI, what are the kind of things that the actuaries need to consider here? And you'll see that there's, again, another guidance document in inverted commas, and this comes through in a number of this. And this is the role of the central committee, is to make sure we're not producing 1,000 guidance documents, but we're producing tools that are relevant and helpful and useful for users. And some of these may develop in due course into guidance documents, formal guidance documents. But for the moment, and hence the word guidance in inverted commas, because we don't want it to be turned into a standard actuarial practice at this point in time. But also to just help people dealing with elements like model development, governance, how you deal with data, how you deal with a control cycle, and so on and so forth. And again, those are the outputs that are expected to come out of the changing role of actuaries work stream. The governance work stream is looking at the moment, they're already busy working on developing AI regulations, looking at they're looking at what governance of AI and regulations are out there amongst regulators. Because obviously regulators are concerned about this, both from a conduct point of view and from a prudential point of view. And so the first steps that they're looking at is just trying to find out what's out there and comparing that to say what is best practice, and then being able to identify guidelines that can go back to regulators. And again, developing a governance framework within entities, not only from a regulatory point of view, but from a business point of view, around data models and implementation of those. So those are some of the things that these various task teams are doing. I do want to just go back one slide. You'll notice that the AI questionnaire element at the top there, and I know that there was a questionnaire that did go out to FMAs about a year and a half ago, I think, from the Professionalism Committee, just to try and sense what FMAs are doing. I think we got 8 responses or something like that. So there is a request when it comes to your FMA, when we get this questionnaire out there, to please respond in that space and move that forward. Now, the last 2 work streams both connect with 2 different elements of the program. The one is the education element, which will connect to the Education Committee here, and I'm going to pass on to Henning. And then the last is the innovation work stream, which is linked into the Future Actuary Task Force, which Jill will speak on.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning, everybody. Very good. As you know, education has always been an easy and straightforward topic within the IAA. So it's my big pleasure to be involved with this work stream. Many things you see on the slide really resonate with what you've heard from Charles, Frank, and Peter as well. So our task is to determine potential impacts on AI on the education and training of actuaries. So what do future actuaries need to know and need to be able to do within the field of AI? But also, what do experienced actuaries in leadership roles need to know? What are boundaries? What are opportunities? And that's what the work stream is currently working on. You see a couple of key issues. Most of them might not surprise you. A quite interesting one is the third one. How should assessment of actuaries with AI evolve? So how do examination look like in a couple of years? Should AI be in there? Should examinees be allowed to use AI? Should we try to support the usage of AI in examination to prepare the people for the future in different scenarios, as we have learned? So all in all, you see the three deliverables that we are working on. First of all, collect information. So many things already being established in data science and AI all around the globe to understand what is happening, to perhaps see different focuses there. So that's the first thing we would like to finish by end of July. Based on that, to support, especially the ones that are already working in the actuarial field, to collect different case studies to understand where AI has already been applied in practical tasks, to give guidance, to give help, to give support for all of us. And the last part, and that's the most interesting one, to create a proposal to the education committee on AI education topics. We will see how this will work out, how this will resonate with the governance we have within the IAA, whether it fits to the syllabus with the core and the elective part. It's a task then in the end for the education committee and all of us to work with this, but we are very motivated to find a very good solution up to date, including everything from our perspective that needs to be included in education in the future. So thank you very much.
Good morning. So I'm Jill Hoffman from Singapore Actuarial Society, and I'm here representing the innovation work stream. And being innovative, we've come up with a different slide template than everyone else as well. So the innovation work stream came up with sort of three key tasks that they want to focus on. So one is hosting public competitions. I learned today that hackathon is not always a well-known term by everyone, but basically the competitions would be taking a big group of data and then analyzing it or solving a particular problem with it. So those are often called hackathons in the IT circles. We also want to basically almost have a marketing arm. So looking at producing podcasts and interview content to promote the AI task force as well as AI actuaries within AI. So with that, we came up with a hashtag. So please feel free to use it when possible and when appropriate, hashtag AI for actuaries. As well as we want to build online tools to build a global online community for the actuarial AI community. So these, the podcasts and the online tools will not be limited only to the innovation work stream, but go across and support all the other work streams when it comes to AI. So then the question is, how does this fit in with the future actuary? So obviously there's a very natural link, and with Henning's talk about what skills and education do actuaries need moving forward, very much fits in to the future actuary task force. And with the future actuary, we're looking at the future actuary as a person who's a problem solver, multi-skilled, analytical, and proactive. These are words that could describe us now, but we want to get out there and be more proactive about advertising actuaries as this, because the AI opportunities here, if we do not act quickly and act almost aggressively to them, then we will be passed by. So we need to show off these skills, and with that, we think it'll also help bring people into the actuarial fields to say, like, look, we're sexy, we can do fun things, you don't need to go work at Spotify, come work with us, or you can go work at Spotify as an actuary, as well as build demand. So convincing both not only the traditional employers that we can do the AI, so you don't need to replace us with the data scientists, but also with the non-traditional employers as well. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Peter and Henning and Jill. And I hope you'll agree that there's a lot of exciting ideas flowing through to the work of the team, who are all committed to delivering significant product by the end of this year. And as I say, one of the exciting things about the work of the AI task force has been its reaching out to new, younger actuaries who haven't previously engaged with the global profession. And they're excited by the opportunity to engage with the global profession. I had more than one actuary come up to me in Singapore and say, I'm really excited about the IAA. How can I get more involved? And that's really a positive thing, irrespective of the important work that the AI group is doing. And a big thank you to Peter. I know he's a very busy man, and taking all this on as well, it's a lot to ask. But we're inspiring a new generation, and that's really important. And it comes on to what I want to cover in the next couple of sessions, because for me, one of the key purposes of the IAA is to support our global profession, to support the growth of actuaries around the world, to support associations both young and old, those associations who are well established in their countries and have got very well established education and professionalism and technical structures, as well as those associations who are just coming and learning to live within a country that is still quite new to actuarial science. I did a little bit with, of course, help from our excellent executive of investigation into how actuarial work has changed since the first ICA, which was how the IAA was formed back in 1895, when, if you look back then, the agenda items were pretty much around life assurance and mortality. In fact, many of the papers that were discussed back in 1895 would not be unfamiliar if we were to present them again today. Yes, we'd be using new technology, but the subject matter and the issues that were being discussed were as relevant then as they are today. The big thing that's changed is that as a profession, we've spread our wings. We have gone into new and different areas, from pensions through to general insurance or property and casualty and social security. We've branched into numerous areas of finance and investment and more general risk management. And more recently, we've become experts within banking sector, within a whole host of areas around climate change. And this is probably the first town hall for a while where climate change is not getting prominence. That's not because it isn't still really important for us. And I would emphasize that there's a lot of great work that the IAA is doing around it. It's just that I felt it was time for us to showcase some of the other important issues that we need to be thinking about. And data analytics. Really exciting to see actuaries in different parts of the world branching into new and different areas. Frank's a great example of somebody working for a non-traditional employer as an employee of Uber. But he's not the only one. There are many, many actuaries now working in very different environments. And it's one of the great attractions and the great advantages that the IAA can give us all is that we can learn from each other. So we can learn from the South Africans about all the work that they've done in banking. I know certainly within the IFOA, we've been looking to the South Africans for help on banking. We can look to the Australians for all of the work that they've been doing in data analytics. They're way ahead of most of us in terms of building in data science into their education pathways. So we want to learn from them. And this is a forum in which we can learn from each other, because it's in all of our interests to see the growth of the profession, not only within those countries where the profession is well established, but also to help other countries develop their own professions. I've got a few slides for you, again, with the help of the executive. I know as actuaries we like numbers, so I've got some numbers for you. We've introduced a new method after a lot of hard work done by our finance and audit team to define what counts as an actuarial credential for the purposes of IAA subscriptions. But it's given us now a standard benchmark to look at how many actuaries with this MWAC credential exist around the world. And it's positive to see that right across the world, the actuarial profession is growing. Not surprisingly, it's growing faster in the smaller associations than it is in the larger associations, but it is growing. And that growth is seen, those figures, the percentage figures at the top, are for the 5 years from 2020 to 2024. And it's positive growth right across the world. And very quickly, just drilling down into each of the three tiers, you can see strong growth in a number of associations. The Germans particularly have seen strong growth. I would just, though, slightly caution on these figures. We as actuaries like to interrogate numbers and check that they are appropriate and valid. Of course, when we introduced the MWAC's credential, or the MWAC sort of description, that did mean that for some associations more suddenly became counted as actuaries for IAA subscription purposes and came into the MWAC title. So some of these numbers are perhaps a little distorted by that. But right across the world, we're seeing in many countries strong double-digit growth over that period. And again, not surprisingly, in the smaller associations, in some countries, very significant growth. Now, these numbers we are planning, you can already go to our website and click on an individual country to see how many actuaries exist within a country. But we're planning to show these numbers more obviously within a spreadsheet so that you can have a look in detail at how the actuarial profession around the world is changing. And I think that's important. It's important for us to understand where countries are doing really good things that we can learn from, and where other countries are perhaps struggling and we can help. And I want to mention at this stage the really important work of advice and assistance. My good friend Mohammed Amran, who's here somewhere today, who chairs, there he is over there, who chairs advice and assistance, is responsible for that part of our structure within the IA that looks to help those nascent associations that are still struggling to become fully fledged, functioning associations. And so I have a plea for you today, which is to help us. I'm going to be working with Mohammed to set out some very clear priorities and objectives for advice and assistance. I'm really keen that we as an IAA are looking to encourage the growth of the global profession. But we need your help. It may well be that you would think that that's not something that affects my everyday life. Why should I go and help how the profession is developing in Southeast Asia or in Africa or somewhere else? But as a global profession, I believe it's our duty to help each other. And it's in our interests to help each other, because if we could grow the global profession, as I was mentioning earlier, we learn from each other. There's some really exciting things that are going on in Africa. We were talking a bit about AI just before. Some of the innovation of AI in Africa is exciting to see. There is an actuary working in Kenya and Ghana, John Olokuru, who is developing apps to help smallholder farmers plant the right seeds at the right time with the right care and maintenance, because he's giving these farmers access to short-term and long-term weather data, as well as information about climate and soil types, and how you can maximize the likelihood of getting the best crops, and then giving access to insurance, and because insurance companies can have more reliance that the local communities will be planting the right crops and giving them the right care and attention, that they will then be able to better provide insurance cover, giving greater security to the societies that rely on these smallholder farmers. So really, really interesting, innovative work. And he's not alone. There's some really exciting things going on in Africa. And it's part of our, I believe, our duty as global actuaries to help that, but also to learn from it, because some of the things that they're doing, we want to find out about, because it will help all of us. So at that point, I just want to introduce Makami and I believe another of her team, just to talk a little, very briefly about an initiative which is part of the work plan of advice and assistance, looking to grow the profession, in this case within Africa. So Makami, it's over to you.
Thank you so much, Charles. I don't know if there's so much to add to what you said about the role of the global actuary, but thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, so Mokami Njaro is my name. I want to tell you about an initiative called the Actuarial Academy, Actuarial Development Academy of Africa. And you can see the French version. So myself, Yosidi, and Yvonne are the founders of this initiative. And I actually want to tell the story because it came up at the IAA Africa Task Force, where we were looking across the African landscape, and we do see similar problems in terms of the level of education, the actuarial professionalism, and so on, but we don't see a consolidated solution. So this is our answer, a transformative continent-wide initiative aimed at advancing the actuarial profession within Africa. We've also seen the financial services industry actually acknowledging the need to develop actuaries. So a lot of organizations are coming up with actuarial programs and so on and so forth. So ADA will actually, these are the objectives as you see on the screen, but we're focused on developing actuarial professionals as well as the pipeline, because when we look at the actuaries per GDP per capita, actuaries per capita, we see there's quite a low number if you look at the population and even the economies in Africa. So we have tried out an initial concept in East Africa called the Actuarial Academy of East Africa, and it's been quite successful. So we're taking that concept Africa-wide. We've been able to discuss with an Africa-wide organization, Africa-RE, to be the hosts of this initiative. And we're really excited to be able to bring it to this forum so that even as we go through the IAA Advice and Assistance Committee, when we come to you for assistance or just involve you, then obviously that is well received. And a lot of our members are obviously members of the IFOA, of CARS, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot to get there. The important thing is to say is that this initiative is funded by actuaries, for actuaries, and a lot of the founders have worked in the developed markets and are now working in Africa. So we understand the situation and the problems and challenges, but we also understand what it could be. And I think the things that Charles and the other speakers have put forward as a vision for the profession is something that we think having this hub within the continent will really enable and bring to mind. That's what I'll say for now, and I'll hand over to Yasidi to tell you about how we're going to do it with the pillars and the timelines.
So, good morning, everybody. I have the task of, I got it right the first time. I have the task of talking you through the pillars and what we're doing. My name is Yeside Kazim. So as Mukami just said, we've taken learnings from the AAEA, and we're going to use pillars. So the first thing when we were doing this is we thought about everything but the first pillar. So I'll start with the first pillar. We had initially set it up. We talked about education, because when you talk about actuaries in Africa, the first thing you're thinking about is how do you get them qualified, and that was a key one. Do we have any accreditation? So I'm going to talk about the education development. Do we have any universities where they can get accreditation from? How are we supporting their growth as actuaries? And so that was initially where we started thinking about that. Then we talked about tutorials. How do we get them to pass the exams? It's very important that they take, from the exam writing bodies, how do we get them? And it's quite a big task. And the difference between how you study in the UK, because I qualified in the UK, and how you study in Nigeria, which is where is very different. And we've had to organize tutorial sessions for them virtually to get them across the line. So the tutorials is going to be really big. Mentorship is what it says on the tin. We need everybody to volunteer to help bring the quality of the profession up. I think that's mainly because we have so few actuaries in Africa that you become senior very quickly. How do you get them to understand what that role really means? How do you get them to give the best value back? And I think that's by collaborating with people who've done it elsewhere. And we've been lucky enough to see some of, I think the IE has volunteered in an initiative this year. We've seen some volunteers from that. We want to encourage more volunteers on that. Haven't talked about the first three, those three initiatives. We then said, look what's happening with those who are actually working, those who have passed some exams. And so we went to the professionalism development course where we talked about, can we put together a course that kind of attacks certain areas of the profession? Can we see whether we can do a risk management course? Can we see whether we can do an AI course? Can we see whether we can, almost like a refresher course for those who are actually working and those who've done different things? Because when you're in the UK, you will be asked, what sort of actuary are you? You will say you're a GI actuary, you're a life actuary. In Africa, you are an actuary, full stop. You do everything. So sometimes you might need a refresher on areas where it's not your original strength. So that was what we came about with that, to be able to address that gap in people's education as they go along. In terms of timelines, I thought I got it right. Okay, in terms of timelines, we are aiming for a soft launch at the end of this year. But we've spent the year already talking to a number of people. We've talked to a host, we've talked to a number of people in the room, a number of associations, but we want to talk to a lot more people. We want to identify some specialists to help us with those costs. We want to talk to local partners, develop our governance structure. We want to do all that this year. So there's quite a lot for us to do and to find our team, basically, and to develop our team. Next year, we're going to go live with 3 pillars. The tutorials, the mentorships, and start a little bit of the accreditation support for universities. And then the following year, we want to release this professionalism course, which we nicely call the Analytic Foundation Program, to help develop professionals already in there. We'll be giving a longer talk at the Advice and Assistance Committee meeting later on today. If you do have any questions, please do feel free to reach out myself or Mukami for questions. Thank you, Charles.
Many thanks, Mukami and Yoside. Really important initiatives, really exciting to hear what's happening in Africa. And I do think it's really important for us as a global organization to reach out and to help and to share. We all benefit, as I say, from the growth of the profession around the world, as well as Africa needing our help. We need their help. We need their enthusiasm, their embracing of doing things differently, their innovations that they're coming up with. And by sharing and learning from each other, as a whole, we grow. So can I, again, encourage you to think about getting involved within advice and assistance. I do think it's a really important part of the work of the IA, and one that I'm particularly keen to support in my year. So, as well as supporting the growth of FMAs and the development of associations, both well established and young, I also wanted to say a few words about what the IA can do to support individual actuaries. As I've already said, one of the exciting things about Singapore was seeing these young actuaries wanting to get involved in the global profession. And we have, within the IAA, a structure for allowing that. We have the sections. And I'm a big fan of the sections. The sections do some fabulous work. Everyone within this room should be a member of at least one section. It's really exciting to see some of the things that are going on within the sections. The sections are where things bubble up from ideas from individuals. It's really important, I've mentioned it again, that we are an association of associations with a culture of consensus, which means that we have to operate together and do stuff together. But that sometimes gets in the way of individuals having great ideas and say, why don't we look at this? Why don't we try that? Why don't we do some research into this? And that's where the sections come into their own. I particularly want to highlight to you the work of Aston in production of their masterclasses, which I think are truly excellent. And if you've not had a chance to have a look at Andrew Smith and others talking about model risk, then I really, really urge and encourage you to do so, because they are very accessible, they are excellent masterclasses, and they are available. You can register there, and they're free. And you will see firsthand some of the great work that is being done by the sections. And I just want to commend this initiative in particular, but generally the work of the sections. Now, having said lots of positive things about the sections, we do have a challenge, because our section membership has been declining. And there are a number of reasons for this, and I'm not going to bore you by going into some of the history behind those reasons. But those of you that come along to the ICA or the colloquia, you will know what great events they are that are run by the sections. So one of my tasks this year, another one of my tasks, is to work with Abe and the sections to look at ways that we can revitalise the membership of the sections. In a profession that is growing around the world rapidly and now has over 75,000 members, we ought to be able to see significant growth in the individual membership of the IAA, which is what the sections are. It's an opportunity for individuals to join the IAA. And the evidence from Singapore is that there is a lot of appetite, particularly amongst younger members, to reach out to other younger members and to learn from each other and to help progress the profession. Younger members are particularly interested in the key issues of today, like climate change, like pandemics, like AI. All of those topics have seen actuaries from around the world come together and work together and see how we can make the world a better place using the power that the analytical power that actuaries can bring in problem solving. So there's lots of appetite, and we need to find ways to engage and grow not just the next generation of actuaries, but the next generation of members of the IAA. And I just want to give a little opportunity to showcase one particular initiative that is being developed by the Germans and the French to support young members. I think it came out of an idea from the Australians. Are always very good at getting ahead of other people with ideas, so well done. But the Germans and the French are looking at collaborating to see if they could replicate some of the good work that's been done there. So if I could hand over now to Clemens and Daniel and Samuel. I'm not quite sure what order you're all doing it in, but the floor is yours. Clemens.
Thank you, Charles. Let's just wait for Daniel and Samuel. First of all, big thanks to the French Institute. I mean, let me just talk about how this initiative came up. It was aside a committee meeting when we talked about, and Thomas was also there, Thomas Béat, about how we can, say, motivate younger actuaries to really join international activities. First of all, we were fully convinced about the worth of international work. First of all, I mean, if you're looking around, I mean, our societies are challenged by internal and external factors, by the innovation of AI, but also by the potential abuse of AI. They are challenged by maybe the biggest challenge we have, by the climate change at current times, and this all can only be addressed by international collaboration. But we were aware that, I mean, there are some practical problems at hand, and these are that we must motivate younger actuaries to join us in our activities. So we need to keep them in contact with our organizations. And that's a challenge for many FMAs, the challenge for FMAs, for AAE, for IAA. And we wanted to address that. And Peter talked about the age demographics. I think that's one of the solutions, to keep the young actuaries in contact with our organizations. And at the same time, we knew, and I just tried to go forward. Yes. At the same time, we knew that there are many young actuaries out there. I mean, in different organizations. I mean, in France, I mean, it's a very central organization around Paris. In Germany, we have local chapters across the big insurance cities like Munich, like Cologne, like Hanover. And we were fully aware that we need to bring these together. This is an organizational challenge at some time, of course, and Daniel and Samuel will talk about that a bit later. But there's a few success factors, I think, which are there, or cornerstones which we want to obey when doing so. And I think this already worked out. I mean, this initiative is around a year old. It started to work. So first success factor is, I think, to lower the barriers for entry. I use existing structures like the local chapters and the strong young actuaries network in France to bring the actuaries together, to lower the barriers for integration. Second success factor is keep high the self-motivation and energy in the young actuaries. They're interested in these topics like AI and sustainability. So we needed to give them maximum freedom in designing the formats and the interchange, how they want to live that, more or less. Yeah? And at the same time, and that's the third point, we wanted to enable them to use the existing, say, organizational forms of our organizations, of the Institute and the DAV, to enable this, say, this growth of an international integration. So we call it guided enablement to bring that alive. As I said, it's the first steps now. It's a year old, and we are looking forward to grow that further. And maybe I think, Samuel, you're showing us the next step of that initiative. You do that as you like. Exactly. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I mean, Daniel is very unhappy that I'm doing this slide because he's very proud of it, but you know, he decided I was doing it. There's three missions and 3 levels, I would say, for this initiative. First, we want to bring some benefits on a personal level to our young members, career development, networking, and they're very keen on that. Then on the professional level, trying to give them some events where they can participate and they can organize and everything. And then intercultural event, of course, where they meet each other and we can build a community, and we build the Franco-German Association for the next few years and the AE and the IA for the next 20 years. So that's very important. Daniel, next one. Let you press the button.
So as you might have seen, there was a small tag hinting on the Convention A Europe. So the Young Actuaries Initiative has already been soft kicked off with an appearance at the Convention A Europe, which took place in last March. And there was a slot dedicated to young actuaries with the title The Actuary of the Future. And it was composed of 2 parts. First of all, we had French young actuaries elaborating on the S dimension in the ESG criteria, and some young professionals from DAV sharing their expertise on actuarial data science and the future proceeding in this field.
And yeah, that's the right button. Okay. Okay, next activities. So as we say, we had the kickoff. We planning to have first young actuaries on site, a small forum at the end of the year, and then a first online event. Let's say March, but we'll see March 2025. It takes a while, and it takes a while to organize your teams in your country, but then when you try to move cross-border, it takes a while as well. So that's why we wanted to do something with France and Germany. So about the same size of association with different structure, but it's much easier to move with just 2 legs, and then try to expand later, I believe.
So as it was already mentioned beforehand, it's a promising initiative. We have very passionate young actuaries working on this project, but yet some things are clear, some are not. It's in the making. So we would like to invite you and encourage you to join us for a brief talk and exchange in conference room 1 at 10:30 to also bring in your views, your needs to consider this in the further making of the project. So thank you very much for your attention on this very interesting topic.
Thank you very much, Daniel, Samuel, and Clemens. The next generation is clearly really important for us. So anything that we can do to encourage the development of the next generation, I think is excellent. And I'm really pleased that the French and the Germans are getting together to encourage the growth of the network of young actuaries. Our final topic for today is a fairly short discussion around what's happening to the future of populations, because that affects so much of what we do. So I'd like at this stage to invite Vincent and Alex and Yi Ling on stage, if I may. Please come up. We're going to have, I'll take you through a couple of slides. Vincent is then going to talk a little bit about fertility and population change in Chinese Taipei, and then we'll have a short discussion. So these are the sorts of fertility charts that you will almost certainly have seen before. This is information that's easily available from the OECD website. I won't bother trying to explain the numbers other than to say, go and have a look at the OECD, you can find it. But the basic message is fertility is falling and falling fast. And then equally, if you go to the UN, you can see a whole host of information on what the UN is predicting for what that might do to our population, which some people might say is a good thing, that the population is going to potentially peak and then start falling towards the end of the century. The challenge is that that might be true as a population as a whole, but the population of older people is still growing very fast, whilst the population of younger people is in decline or relative decline. And that raises a whole host of serious challenges. So I'd like to, at this point, to ask Vincent to talk a bit about how that is affecting in Chinese Taipei. Vincent.
Okay, thank you, Charles, and good morning to everyone. I am Vincent Chen from Actuarial Institute of Chinese Taipei. It's great to have the opportunity to introduce the population trend in the place our association is located. First, currently we are facing a situation that is different from the trend that just of the world population growth just presented by Charles. The population in Chinese Taipei is declining now and in the future. According to the government research report, the main factor causing that is the low birth rate. So why the birth rate is the birth rate will depend on the woman's choice for marriage and childbirth. For now, the long-term education, continuing age of schooling will lengthen the average age of a woman into a marriage. Also, the higher education, combined with the increased job opportunity for women, make them more economically independent. So having a family might not be the only choice for them. In addition, the burden for of childbearing is heavy, so we need a double salary to support a family with the children. And difficult independence in the work and family, and many more married couples choose to have less children, or even have not to have a child. So there's some statistics will show the support what were our reasoning for the development in Chinese Taipei. There's a low birth rate. The first is the percentage of unmarried women is increasing. And higher education and economic independence might explain the change. You can see the percentage is increased from 20 years ago, 40, until now it's 40 for the unmarried women. But the having children after marriage is still the mainstream in Chinese culture. So we may know of birth rates depend on the marriage married woman. And next page shows that the first marriage for women delayed from ages 26 to age 31 in recent 20 years. And finally, one children only will be the majority will be majority of our many couples. A lot of couples just choose to have one children only. So in Chinese Taipei, population peak is in the year of 2019. Now the trend is declining. Without a significant increase in the total fertility rate, and our population is projected to decline faster and even faster in the future. So the population trend you can see from these figures. So we are now facing a different trend it is different from the world. So our government is now preparing for some policy to change the trend, increase more welfare system or some subsidies for the young families. But I think it need time to see where there will be a change for that. I think for now, we are in the landing shape of our population, but after 50 years, it will become a different shape. So we are trying to figure out what is the way can change the situation. I think maybe you can provide some advice from how we can revise that. And the above is the situation in Chinese Taipei. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vincent. So I thought we'd just finish this session with a brief panel discussion, and I'm joined by, as well as Vincent from Chinese Taipei, we've got Alex, who's the president of the Singapore Actuarial Society, and Yiling from the Casualty Actuarial Society, the oh, so I knew I'd get that wrong. Apologies. Conference of Consulting Actuaries in the US. So I just thought I'd put some questions to you to just get us thinking about some of the issues. So, Alex, what do you think are the societal reasons for the changes that we're seeing and the likelihood of these trends continuing?
Okay, before I answer that question, I think I'll first make a disclaimer. What I'm going to say today in no way represents the Singapore Actuarial Society's views, me being very edgy most of the time. Before I address the societal reasons, I would say that is reducing fertility really a problem? Or if so, whose problem is this? If you ask Mother Earth, it would say not a problem. You remember the COVID lockdown and the restriction to human activities. The skies cleared up, pollution reduced almost instantly, right? It's more effective than many of the climate change initiatives that we're trying to put in place. So Mother Earth may say no issue, right? I think the reducing fertility rate is more a threat to the social construct, or what Yuval Harari, the best-selling author who wrote *Sapiens*, may say is a threat to the stories that human tells ourselves about country, clan, and races, right? actually a lot of the problems that we see triggered by low fertility rate may not need more births to solve. All we need maybe just to be more welcoming to people who are different from us, who may not be able to exhibit their full human potentials in the countries that they live in due to all the constraints or discriminations that they are facing. Maybe more open immigration policy with integration support that may already solve the problem. So back to the question about the societal reason, I think it all boils down to one word, which is hope, right? The recent Korean study shows that couples in the lower socioeconomic class are delaying parenthood, while people in the higher socioeconomic class are actually more likely to have the second or third child. Right. So it's all about, I think for parents who care about their offsprings, they would tend to have more children if they feel that they are able to provide their children with good support, a good life going forward. And a lot of this expectation boils down to how they live the experience in their workplace, in their family, in the society at large. If we don't address the root cause of hopelessness, be it discrimination, be it lack of social mobility, be it unfair law enforcement in courts, I think the fertility trend would not voluntarily reverse, unfortunately. So I think hope is a very important thing. And I come from the worldview that none of us voluntarily come to this world, right? And for older person to say that, oh, I want the younger couples to have more kids so that my pension will be funded, that sounds incredibly selfish. And from a young couple perspective, especially those from the middle to lower social strata may say, oh, me giving birth to a kid is to be seen as a resource to be harvested by the society. Does it give me hope? Right? Why would I want to bring another soul to this world to face this? No. So, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Yiling, a perspective from your side.
Yeah, so I do think that these societal trends will continue. I mean, all the reasons that are happening in Chinese Taipei are happening all around the world, right? In most developed countries, there's a quality of life issue, which is the biggest thing, right? If you have a large population that is growing elderly, and you have a small population of working individuals that are supporting some of the social systems through taxation and all that sort of stuff, you're going to have a lower quality of life for everybody across the board. And so the real key here to me is how do we balance the system so that quality of life can be increased or maintained stable across all different ages. And so it's not necessarily that we continue to tax the young to provide for the old, but maybe we look for different ways to balance the system. Maybe the older folks now are living higher quality of life longer, and so perhaps they can work a little bit longer. And so some societies have increased that mandatory retirement ages or ages where they become eligible for, well, in the US at least, national health care is age-based. And so these are, I think, the things that are going to be important is balancing the system across different parts of the world. Everybody is sort of facing this declining fertility, but they're all in different places in the world. So some of the developed countries are much more advanced with having the elderly population and the shrinking young population, and some others, for example, in Africa, there is a shrinking fertility, but the replacement rate is still fairly high. In sub-Saharan Africa, I think the replacement rate right now is each woman is on average having 4.6 children, which is much higher. And so the population in Africa will continue to grow for a number of decades if this trend continues, right? And so they're having different issues than maybe the United States or places in Asia.
Thank you. Vincent, you've given us thoughts already about Chinese Taipei. Do you see these trends continuing?
For now, in Chinese Taipei, I think it is so, but it is still the low fertility rate and the low birth rate, they become some challenge for us. What is the challenge? What is the challenge? Because we're competing for young generation with talent into our actual profession. as a competition in Taiwan. Because there is some choice they can get into study for the AI, the statistical or when you are a statistical or mathematics major the student, they can choose for their study for AI. And some student in Taiwan will go for the semiconductor industry making the chips. It make more pay for them. But in the shrinking number of generations, we want to talent into our actual profession. It will become a challenge for us. How can we compete there and have more talent people to into our generation and have the actual profession to grow? I think it will be a challenge for us. It will be grow. Well, the trend I think will go in China Taipei, but we'll have to find out a way to solve that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Vincent. So, to all of you, what are the implications then of this change in terms of sustainability of our social security systems, our healthcare systems, our long-term care systems, protection gaps, and immigration? And what should actuaries, and in particular the IAA, be doing about it? So, Yi Ling first.
Yeah, I think there's obviously major implications across the board for many countries, most countries in the world, social security systems, healthcare, long-term care, as you said. I think our challenge maybe is to think of it a little bit differently. So right now, the way that we balance those systems is through age subsidization, right? Insurance products are inherently subsidization. One group of the population pays more than their fair share for another population. And right now, in most of these issues that we're discussing with fertility and mortality and longevity is really subsidization across age, right? Can we as actuaries think of different ways to subsidize that is not entirely based on age? I don't know those answers, but it's something that we can challenge ourselves as a society and as a profession.
Okay, thank you. Vincent, I'll let you go next. What are the implications and what should we be doing about it?
Yeah, some changes. Just Ian said the previously depend on the past ecosystem to get a benefit for social security or just a pension plan. Some need a change for that. How to balance the benefit to the different generation will be our consideration. I think we as actually can find a way to have some suggestion to the government or some institutions in charge of that, and with some advice for that, and we can play our role as actually and get the benefit of our society. Okay.
Thank you, and I'll give the last word to Alex.
A few suggestions. If we just want to put something on the technical development agenda, right? In the climate change space, we already have scenarios of 1.5 degrees, 3 degrees, and so on and so forth. Why can't IAA be the one that leads the development of scenarios for different fertility rate scenarios in the world? Right, if the whole world now drops to what 1.5 or below 1, what would the world look like? And then you can start doing stress tests about it, right? Okay, back to the more sort of fiscal perspective. Of course, most of the social security systems, especially those that are working on pay-as-you-go system, may actually collapse. That you can start taxing people, but there's only so much you can do. You can print more money, but it will lead to devaluation or may even lead to the eventual collapse of the whole fiat currency system. Then there'll be social unrest and things like that. So we need to think about that. But I think another thing to think about is the society attitude may change. Just as how the move to have more countries with that have legalized same-sex marriage, I think the lower fertility trend may actually drive countries to start legalizing euthanasia or even assisted suicide. right? Because it comes from two camps. First is as people sort of run out of resources living a long life, right? And healthcare costs becomes so expensive, right? They may actually just want to end it in a less painful way. The second, I think, also applies to many Asian families in especially people around my age, around 40s. We have to face the burden of supporting our parents and our kids at the same time. We don't want our kids to go through the same thing. So if it comes to a time where my medical bills become such a huge burden to my kids, I may actually just want to end it there and not to burden my kids. Right? It would be a good product innovation if that can be a soft savings product that instead of just giving me one lump sum, you provide me a service to go to visit the nice mountains in Europe, and then have a peaceful tour, and I press a button and say goodbye to this world. That would be fantastic.
Well, on that positive note, Ludina, do you want to ask a question? Oh, Frank wants to. So, I'm conscious that we have. Have we got a mic if somebody can ask a question, or do you want to just come to this?
As a woman, your blood should be boiling at this a bit. Because if we're such an important resource to an economy, treat us better. I mean, there's a massive gender pay gap. You want us to have babies. We have to work. We have to look after all those elderly people because the nurses are women. We also have to look after the babies. These professions are not paid nearly as well as the male-suited professions. I'm lucky, I'm an actuary, so I get treated like a man economically, but most women do not. So fix that. Why do you, I won't go into the cultural things of you have to be married to have children, like change that cultural construct. And that brings me to the SDGs. We're only treating this like a choice. It's not a choice for women not to have children. We've created such a bizarrely polluted environment that in Europe we currently have the permanent, what is it called? Permanent pollutants. These things play havoc on your hormones. I mean, it doesn't get discussed in a room like this, it's awkward, but women can't actually always have kids anymore. It's not just a choice. So on top of having to do all this, getting paid a horrible salary, it's not great to be a woman. Maybe change that. Pleasure.
I love that comment because we bristled at our table when it said unmarried women. We're like, why is it all on women, right? Two comments. One, if there's evidence, okay, that older folks have more wealth now because of the choice to work more, right? So I would love to have seen like some sort of, as an actuary, right, some sort of accounting for that. Because if elders are more wealthy, where does the dependency start? That's the first thing. The second, healthcare needs to get better. I think healthcare focused on elderly or even mid-elderly, given that shift that you see on the screen, should get better. And you already have startups in this area. For women, they have something called MIDI Health. I know because my wife is using it now, and they are focused on premenopausal, menopausal, and postmenopausal women, which is an area that there's not a whole lot of healthcare in there. So there's innovation to look at this changing demographic in order to better serve it. Anyway, thanks.
Thanks, Frank. Okay, so the purpose of this wasn't to come up with any answers, I'm afraid, Ludina. This was about getting conversations going, but raising these really, really important issues because they are going to affect us, all of us, and actuaries are going to be central to coming up with some of the solutions. But I would like to ask you all to thank our panelists for leading us in this. And with that, I'm going to call a coffee break. That's the end of this town hall session. Thank you for joining us. I hope you found that useful and enjoy the rest of the meetings here in Seoul. Thank you.